The Fox 61 one-on-one interview with Governor Lamont is sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Thanks so much for joining us for this Facebook Live with the governor. We asked for your questions, and we have them now, and we want to bring on Governor Ned Lamont. Governor, thanks for joining us this evening.
Hi, Jen.
So let's get started. You talked about contact tracing today during your daily briefing. And this is going to be run by the Department of Public Health. It sounds like they're testing out software alongside Microsoft in the next week or two, and they want to have it up and running by mid-May. You said that this is incredibly important for reopening Connecticut. There are privacy concerns, though, that go along with it. Tell us what protections are going to be put in place here for people.
Well, let me first say about contact tracing. It probably goes back 100 years, most recently used in and around measles, something else that's highly contagious, but nothing's as contagious as COVID. And what you do is you find somebody who would test positive for COVID or measles before that. You give them a call, or you contact them by text, and you say, if you want, would you be willing to tell us who else you have been in contact with over the previous, say, 4, 5, 6 days? Contact meaning maybe spent 10 minutes of time with in relatively close quarters, say, 4, 5, 6 feet. And then we, in turn, can notice those people and say, you have been in contact with somebody who's tested COVID positive. You may want to self-quarantine, or you may want to get a test at one of the drive-through Abbott lab tests. So that's how it works. And it is opt-in, as they say. If you don't want to participate, nothing says you have to participate, but obviously it works a lot better if people who are infected are willing to say who else they've been in contact with.
Is it easier to get people to sign up if they feel like their information is being protected? So, for example, you're saying people can opt in, but if they opt in, what is happening with their health information? The Department of Health today was saying that there would be some kind of confidentiality with it. It's sensitive, it's people's health, but you have a big company like Microsoft coming in. Will they use the information for something else? Again, will some kind of protections be put in place so that people can have a better peace of mind when using and doing and participating in the contact?
Yeah, there's no determination of what data platform, if any, like a Microsoft, we would use. Right now, if you test positive, your local Department of Public Health and East Windsor knows that fact. That's how we in turn are able to contact you. But you're absolutely right. All that list of contact people could potentially go to the cloud, and from there we can able to better notice other people who have been in contact through that same web. But again, if you don't want to opt in, you don't have to opt in, and that's the end of the game. But I encourage people to think about it broadly, because it's a public health concern, and if more people opt in, then we can limit the spread of the virus.
But couldn't you do something with Microsoft where they have to agree to terms with Connecticut if they're going to participate in this, for protecting people's information?
Absolutely. Everything is going to be anonymized, which means it's got to be anonymous. That's going to be safe.
Okay. All right, we want to talk about some of the positive trends that we're seeing. Declining hospitalizations. You've talked about this for several days now. I think yesterday you said we are on the 7th day of declining hospitalizations, which would make today, which is Tuesday, the 8th day. And according to federal government guidelines from the Trump administration, which you said you agree with, that could mean that we could open in 7 to 10 days, according to you. What does that look like?
That means in about a week or 10 days, we have a declining metric that suggests we can start thinking about what can we open safely and over what period of time. So I think I would probably focus on, those places where you can socially distance and do that safely. So we're going to hear on Thursday afternoon at about 4 o'clock from our Reopen Connecticut committee, what are those types of businesses that we can think about opening now? And it's worth remembering that Most of our companies are already open. Obviously, manufacturing and construction and telecommunications and media, they all stayed open. But for some of those retail outlets on Main Street where people were likely to rub elbows, we had those only for delivery only. That could change over the next couple of weeks, depending on what recommendations we get from the committee.
Yeah, let's talk about the timeline for that committee. May 20th was always your date after you pushed it off from April as to when Connecticut could possibly reconsider reopening schools and reopening businesses. The Reopen Connecticut Advisory Committee, when they talked the other day, had said that was the date that they were going to start presenting recommendations and that early June would be more likely at that point. So which is the date? Because I know obviously things are fluid, but are we looking at May 20th as a goal to possibly get things reopened, or is that when they're going to officially present their proposal?
I think in the next couple of weeks, you can see some small changes we can make as we try and reopen some of the Main Street businesses, only if we can do it with social distancing and safely. May 20th is a date where we're going to have a lot more testing, a lot more protective masks. And at that point, we asked the committee to give us broad-based strategy, what we do going forward. And I told parents and superintendents we're going to make a determination on the rest of the school year before May 20th. So I think we got to give teachers a little more notice. So probably in the next week, 10 days, we'll find out what we want to do for the rest of the school year.
We have gotten so many questions. I want to read some of them from viewers about school. Paul D'Angelo says, Jen, can you ask him why he has to wait to make a decision on schools for the remainder of this year? Local boards of education really need to make budget adjustments. Thomas Pelletier says, ask him if he's near a final decision on school yet. Then he gives his opinion. At this point, they should close till next year. And Tanya also emailed us saying, it has already been said that they likely won't go back, but I'm sure most people, like myself, would like to know as soon as possible. Most states have already made this decision, and we are a state that is harder hit, yet we haven't. So what do you say to these people? Are you saying you're going to make a decision on schools in the next couple days or week at this point?
I think we're going to make that decision within a week, 10 days. Like I said, look, I'd love to keep the schools open at least for a couple of weeks in June. What that means in terms of completion of the school year, if we could do that safely. I think that's a risky proposition right now, but we'll see. You know, over the next 10 days, you say, why do you wait? Because in the next 10 days, we'll see if there's a flare-up or if there's a continuation of the downward trend in terms of infections and hospitalizations. We have some parts of the state that have a very low infection rate, other parts of the state with a higher infection rate. So let me give the Reopen Connecticut Committee a little more time just to figure out what those priorities are. And they're working closely with superintendents of schools around the state, as well as Miguel Cardona, our commissioner. I understand the urgency people feel. It's a big decision, though.
I know you had said during a radio interview a couple weeks ago that you had the feeling that you would end up canceling schools for the rest of the year. And if you look at the timeline, if things are really starting to get back up and running by late May, and then June is where we also see openings, you only have like 2 more weeks of school, 2 or 3 more weeks of school at best. So are you still feeling like at this point there's a high probability of school being canceled for the rest of the year?
If I had to make a guess, I'd say probably. Yeah, I think opening some schools in some parts of the state, but not in other parts of the state, sounds a little complicated to me. But this is just me thinking off the top. Let's let the committee come back with their best advice. They'll have talked to superintendents and teachers around the state. We'll get a better feel for what's possible. And I was talking today to some of the representatives of the teachers. I said, look, if we can't reopen the schools, how about at least a parent-teacher meeting, with a child, all appropriately distanced. You can do it by Zoom or do it in the classroom, just so the kids get some sense of finality and a sense of where they're going and maybe what they've learned in terms of distance learning for the last few months. I know there's a big group of parents who have said, is there any way we can do an outdoor graduation for at least the high school seniors, maybe in a football field with masks, protective gear? So these are all things that the task force is going to give me some advice on over the next week or so.
Is that a serious consideration to do graduation all on one day?
Not sure. I'm not sure. I just know there's a big group of parents who have thought very seriously about it. It would be outside and appropriately distanced, but it does sound a little risky. But that would be late June or July. So we'll see what the facts on the ground are over the next couple of weeks.
All right, let's talk about part of reopening is the unemployment issue that we have in our state. I know you were talking about this today. Getting people back to work is incredibly important, and you had the staggering statistic that at this point, Connecticut's unemployment is north of 20%, which is pretty heartbreaking. And I wonder if you have an update from the Department of Labor, because I'm sure you talk to them on a frequent basis. I know they got their new computer system up and running, and they're trying to get as many claims done as they can. But do you have any new information from that department?
Yes, I do. Obviously, this is 20 times the scale of any ramp up in unemployment claims. I hope it's short-lived and doesn't go on for a long time like many recessions do. I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that I think 80 to 90% of those checks have gone out. The checks with the additional $600 coming from the federal government, they just started going out over the last, say, 3, 4, 5 days. But everybody retroactively would be brought up to snuff on what we got to do. Jen, but the one group we still have a bit of a problem with are the freelancers, the self-employed. Historically, they'd never been under the unemployment comp system, but the federal government, I think in their wisdom, said this is a unique circumstance. They should be covered as well. We got the green light from the feds about a week ago in terms of guidance. And I think that Department of Labor says that's probably going to take a few more days, but those checks are going to be going out very soon as well.
You know, we have gotten just loads of emails from people, and they're talking about really heartbreaking situations, desperate situations that they're in. And it's one thing to have the backlog, and it's another to not physically be able to talk to someone at the Department of Labor to kind of guide them through this unprecedented time. I want to read you just some of the comments that we've gotten in, and this is just a fraction of what we're seeing. Susan McCormick said, I filed for unemployment on April 9th and got a confirmation from the DOL. It had been received, but nothing since. I'm wondering, how do I find out anything? I'm getting nowhere with any of the websites. I live alone and I'm very concerned about how to pay for anything at this point. Tony Jeffers says, I'm not getting any financial help from unemployment and the bank and the bills are stacking up. What about people like us who lost our jobs trying to protect our coworkers? Don't we deserve some help? An email from Michelle. I have emailed them 5 times with no response. I have tried several different phone numbers to no avail. I am now out of options. All I want to do is pay my bills and feed my kid. Any information you could find out would be greatly appreciated, or a phone number that I might be able to call. These people have no money right now and they have no answers. I know I went on the website and there's a number that you can call, but it says do not call for unemployment claims assistance. People are spending hours on the phone only to get a volunteer who says, if you have an existing claim, we can't do anything about it. So what do you tell these people that can't even get answers, even if their payments are delayed?
I can tell them that we got well over 400,000, 20% of our workforce file claims. I can tell them that all the appropriately filled out claims have been paid, or almost all of them. I can tell you that those that are in the backlog or duplicates, there was some problem there. But these are all excuses. You know, we owe these people a response. I can tell you that you're getting the $1,200 checks from the federal government. They were supposed to be landing last week, but those are only if you filed income tax. So I'd say that you have government catching up to an incredibly difficult situation. But if you're sitting there at home and you're alone and you deserve that check and you have bills to pay, I understand exactly the pain you're going through. We also have the 211 information number. That's a second route to go through, but clearly online should be the quickest and easiest way to do it. And if you send me, Jen, just those letters, we'll find out a way to get you a direct follow-up for those people.
I will. I'd be happy to do that. I think people are frustrated because they can't get through, right? If someone's not answering an email. Obviously, the Department of Labor is strapped as well, so there's that aspect of it. Is there a consideration for putting in some kind of 24-hour hotline? I mean, I know we had hundreds of thousands of people fill out unemployment claims, but some kind of assistance center. I know you did it for COVID-related issues. You had a 24/7 hotline put up, but is it appropriate to think about doing that for unemployment claims just because people's situations are so unique?
Well, I mean, we went from 20 people in that department to 100 people in the Department of Labor for the claims adjustments. We found people who are retired. We grabbed them from all over the rest of the department. And you're right, for 211, we've loaded up with links to all the different nonprofit carriers. So people in distress, people who have domestic abuse situations, young people who are lonely. We're trying to find any way we can to connect with them and find at least a telephonic friend who can touch base with you. But I will talk to DOL about seeing how if we can get some more people on board. But in the meantime, get me the list of people who you think we ought to contact.
I will. All right, Governor Ned Lamont, that is going to do it for tonight. But it sounds like we're going to be back here next Tuesday, and I know people are anxious to ask you questions, and we appreciate the opportunity to bring them to you.
No, Jen, thank you. And look, I can hear the anguish in the questions, especially with the DOL and the backlog. We're getting to the front of that line. I just got to give people some sense of confidence that we are getting through this. You look at the COVID pandemic right now, our hospitals got close to the capacity, but the bathtub never overran. Nobody was ever denied a room or an ICU or a vent, and then nobody's going to be denied their unemployment check either. I just want you to know people are working their heart out to get this right, and it'll be right very soon. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Governor.